Amid the blinding city lights, the Grand Metropolitan Hotel stood tall, a monument of luxury and secrecy. A refuge for the rich and powerful, where secrets were guarded as closely as the jewels in the safes. But behind the flawless facade, something dark stirred in the shadows. Something the new night guard, Arthur, was about to uncover. Arthur was a man of habit, a former cop who had traded the dangerous streets for what he hoped would be the peaceful hallways of a five-star hotel. But peace was just an illusion. From his first week, he noticed certain guests simply vanished. These weren't normal checkouts. They were disappearances. No one talked about them. Management, led by the cold and calculating Mrs. Dubois, seemed to have a supernatural ability to make these incidents simply disappear. The first cases were easy to dismiss. A businessman who missed his flight, a socialite who extended her trip. But the pattern became undeniable. Always on new moon nights, always on the same floors, 7th, 11th, and 13th. And always involving guests who were somehow considered problematic. Those who complained too much, made noise, or just didn't fit the Grand Metropolitan's image of the ideal guest. Arthur began to investigate on his own. He dug through security logs, checked surveillance footage. The images were always the same. The guest entered the elevator, went up to one of those floors, and was never seen again. The hallway cameras on those floors always glitched at the critical moments. A malfunction, they said. But Arthur knew better. He had seen Mrs. Dubois and a select group of night staff, faces he barely recognized, but who radiated a strange coldness, roaming those floors on the nights people vanished. One night, curiosity led Arthur to the 13th floor. The elevator, which usually skipped that number, brought him straight there. The hallway was eerily silent, the lights flickering. A sweet, metallic scent hung in the air. He heard whispers coming from room 1301. They weren't human voices. They were guttural, almost animalistic, mixed with what sounded like a muffled cry. He approached the door. It was slightly open. Through the crack, he saw it. It wasn't a guest. It was a ritual. Hooded figures, with Mrs. Dubois at the center, chanted in an unknown tongue. On the floor, a macabre symbol painted in blood. And at its center, what looked like a body. No, several bodies, mutilated, unrecognizable. Panic took over Arthur. He stumbled back, tripping over his own fear. The hooded figures turned, their eyes glowing in the dark. Mrs. Dubois smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to our club, Mr. Arthur," she whispered, her voice now low and distorted. "You're next to check in, and check out is permanent." Arthur ran. He took the emergency stairs, heart pounding out of his chest. He tried calling the police, but there was no signal. The exit doors were locked. He was trapped. The hooded figures chased him, their footsteps echoing down the empty halls. He hid in the laundry room, between piles of white sheets. The smell of blood and mildew was overwhelming. He heard the voices getting closer, the chants growing louder. He knew there was no way out. Arthur's body was never found. The police, alerted by his worried family, found the hotel in perfect order. Mrs. Dubois and the night staff were at their posts, smiling and welcoming new guests. The hotel records showed no Arthur had ever worked there. It was as if he had never existed. But on new moon nights, some sensitive guests say they hear a faint sobbing coming from the upper floors. And sometimes, a new name appears on Mrs. Dubois' list of problematic guests. Names that soon vanish. At the Grand Metropolitan, checkout is just the beginning of an eternal stay. 2 weeks after Arthur vanished, a night janitor, Mr. Costa, found a small diary hidden behind a loose panel in the laundry room. It was Arthur's. The first pages detailed the dull routine, the usual guest complaints. But as the dates went on, the tone changed. The entries became frantic, the handwriting shaky. He described the disappearances, the management's indifference, and his own secret investigations. There were sketches of strange symbols, the same ones he had seen on the 13th floor, and names of guests who had vanished. Mr. Costa felt a chill. He recognized some of those names. People who, according to Mrs. Dubois, had checked out quietly. The last entries in Arthur's diary were the most disturbing. He had discovered a hidden passage in the hotel's basement, a tunnel leading to an unmapped area beneath the foundations. He suspected that was where the rituals took place, where the problematic guests were taken. The final entry read, "I'm going down. I need to know the truth. If I don't come back, find this diary. The Grand Metropolitan hides something terrible. They're feeding something." Mr. Costa, diary in hand, confronted Mrs. Dubois. She listened with eerie calm. Her eyes walked on his, expressionless. When he finished, she simply smiled. "Mr. Arthur was a very imaginative man," she said, her voice soft like silk, but edged with steel. "He had a tendency to see things that weren't there. A shame he chose to leave us so abruptly." Mr. Costa felt the weight of the threat. He knew he couldn't trust anyone here. Mrs. Dubois stepped closer, and the same moldy, bloody scent Arthur had described filled the air. "What will you do with this fiction, Mr. Costa?" she asked, reaching for the diary. He stepped back, gripping it tightly. That night was a new moon. Mr. Costa, unable to sleep, watched the security monitors. He saw Mrs. Dubois and the night staff gathering in the lobby, their faces pale, their eyes vacant. They entered the service elevator, the same one Arthur used, and descended to the basement. Mr. Costa knew what was happening. He felt a burning urge to follow, to find the truth, to avenge Arthur. But fear rooted him in place. He watched the basement camera flicker, showing a distorted image. The hooded figures, the blood symbol, and a new victim dragged into the ritual center. The screen dissolved into static. The next morning, Mr. Costa quit. He never looked at hotels the same way again. But the story of the Grand Metropolitan didn't end there. A new night guard was hired, a young idealist, eager to prove himself. He noticed the missing guests, the management's cold indifference, and on new moon nights, he started hearing whispers from the 13th floor. The cycle had begun again, and Mrs. Dubois, with her icy smile and hollow eyes, was there to greet him. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel continues to operate, a monument of luxury and secrets, where checkout is just the beginning of an eternal stay.
Welcome to the Grand Metropolitan.